SpaceX aces 60th operational Starlink launch after a string of scrubs. Flying for the sixth time just 66 days after its fifth launch, Falcon 9 booster B-1067 lifted off at 8:18 Eastern Time on Sunday, September 18th, with 54 Starlink satellites on SpaceX's Starlink 434 mission. 5 days earlier, on September 13th, SpaceX tried to launch the mission for the first time. This was after an earlier launch attempt on September 11th was put off due to unknown problems. Hey guys, welcome to our channel, Tech Life. Today we'll talk about how SpaceX nailed its 60th operational Starlink launch after a string of failures. So, stick with us to the end. After 5 days of weather delays, SpaceX successfully launched a Falcon 9 rocket from Cape Canaveral on Sunday night. The rocket carried 54 additional Starlink satellites into orbit as the company continues to work towards its goal of completing more than 60 missions this year. Sunday evening at 8:18 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, the 229-foot-tall, or 60-meter Falcon 9 rocket successfully lifted off the launch pad to begin the Starlink 434 mission for SpaceX. Launched from Pad 40 at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in the direction of the northeast, the Falcon 9 was propelled into the night sky by 9 kerosene-fueled Merlin 1D engines as it began its ascent. After a total of 5 days of setbacks, the mission was finally able to get off the ground. The first setback occurred on Tuesday night when the launch team decided to abort a countdown just prior to beginning to load propellants into the Falcon 9 rocket. Throughout the evening, there were numerous lightning strikes that lit up the sky over Florida's Space Coast. Because of similar weather conditions on Wednesday night, officials were forced to call another scrub before tanking. On Thursday night, SpaceX stopped this countdown at approximately T-minus 30 seconds because the weather remained no-go for launch. On Friday night, a situation very similar to this occurred as SpaceX loaded propellants into the Falcon 9, but they stopped the countdown just inside T-minus 60 seconds. The team had planned to attempt another launch on Saturday, but SpaceX announced late Saturday night that they would be delaying the mission until Sunday evening. This launch was the 42nd mission for SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket so far in the year 2022. It was the 40th attempt to launch something into space from Florida's Space Coast this year, and that number includes launches by SpaceX, United Launch Alliance, and the Astra. The upper stage of the Falcon 9 rocket separated 54 Starlink satellites over the North Atlantic Ocean as they were traveling at a speed of approximately 17,000 miles per hour, approximately 15 minutes after liftoff. The combined payload mass of the satellite was approximately 36,800 pounds, or 16.7 tons in total. This month, SpaceX is planning to launch as many as 5 Falcon 9 missions, with the Starlink 434 mission being the third of those missions. At the World Satellite Business Week conference that took place in Paris last week, Tom Ocheniro, Vice President of Commercial Sales for SpaceX, stated that the company aims to complete more than 60 launches this year, with the goal of 100 rocket missions in 2023, continuing a dramatic uptick in SpaceX's launch cadence. The quicker turnaround times between missions at SpaceX's launch pads in Florida and California, as well as the company's ability to reuse Falcon 9 boosters and payload fairings, have all contributed to the increased launch rate. Since the beginning of this year, approximately 2/3 of SpaceX's Falcon 9 flights have been dedicated to carrying satellites for the company's own Starlink internet network. As a ripple effect of the weather-related scrubs for the Starlink 434 mission, the next Falcon 9 launch for the Starlink network was supposed to take place from Cape Canaveral on September 19th, but it was delayed until last week of September. Last month, SpaceX started launching 54 Starlink satellites at a time on dedicated Falcon 9 flights. This is one more spacecraft than the company has typically launched on previous missions. In addition to squeeze more performance out of the Falcon 9, SpaceX has played around with the throttle settings on the engines and made a few other minor adjustments. On September 11th, the Falcon 9 booster that will be used for the Starlink 434 mission underwent a test firing at the launch pad. On September 10th, An attempt to fire a static fire was called off because of a severe thunderstorm that was moving towards the Cape Canaveral spaceport. On September 15th, the weather stopped the third attempt just 29 seconds before liftoff. On September 16th, the weather stopped the fourth attempt a couple of minutes before liftoff. SpaceX finally found a break in Florida's summer weather on September 18th, a day after a fifth try on September 17th was canceled because of bad weather. It's hard to be surprised that Starlink 434 went off without a hitch when dozens of Starlink launches are starting to blend together. And SpaceX's Falcon 9 is still on a record-breaking streak of successes that will soon make it the fastest launching rocket in history. Within SpaceX's fleet of reusable rockets, the booster that was used for the flight on Sunday night is called B-1067. The booster has previously been used to launch 2 resupply missions to the International Space Station, as well as 2 astronaut missions. SpaceX has successfully launched 3,347 Starlink internet satellites as of the completion of the Starlink 434 mission. This number includes prototypes and test units that are no longer in operation. The launch that took place on Saturday was SpaceX's 61st mission, and its primary objective was to place internet satellites for Starlink in orbit. During the countdown on Sunday night, SpaceX's launch team was positioned inside a launch control center just south of Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. At T-minus 35 minutes, they began loading super-chilled, densified kerosene and liquid oxygen propellants into the Falcon 9 vehicle. During the final half hour of the countdown, the rocket was also pressurized with helium, which flowed into the rocket. The Falcon 9's Merlin main engine underwent a process known as chill down that lasted for the remaining 7 minutes before liftoff. This allowed the engines to be thermally conditioned for flight. The guidance and range safety system of the Falcon 9 were also configured for launch prior to liftoff. Following launch, the Falcon 9 rocket used 1.7 million pounds of thrust generated by its 9 Merlin engines to steer itself in a direction that took it over the Atlantic Ocean to the northeast. The rocket was able to surpass the speed of sound in less than a minute, and then it took another minute and a half after liftoff for the 9 main engines to be turned off. Following the booster's stage separation from the upper stage of the Falcon 9, the vehicle's cold gas control thrusters and extendable titanium grid fins were activated to assist in guiding the vehicle back into the atmosphere. The rocket was brought to a stop for landing on the drone ship Just Read the Instructions approximately 8.5 minutes after liftoff through the use of 2 separate bacon burns. The drone ship was located approximately 650 kilometers, 400 miles downrange. During the second stage burn, the reusable payload fairings that were attached to the Falcon 9 was released. In addition, a recovery ship was standing by in the Atlantic Ocean so it could retrieve the 2 halves of the nose cones after they landed safely under their respective parachutes. During the mission that took place on Sunday, the first stage successfully landed just a few moments after the engine of the Falcon 9's second stage shut off to complete the delivery of the Starlink satellite into orbit. It was confirmed that the Falcon 9 rocket and the 54 Starlink spacecraft split apart at T plus 15 minutes and 21 seconds after liftoff. The spacecraft were built by SpaceX in Redmond, Washington. Following the release of retention rods from within the Starlink payload stack, the flat-back satellites were able to break free from the Falcon 9's upper stage while it was still in orbit. After unfolding their solar arrays and going through a series of automated activation steps, the 54 spacecraft will then use ion engines that are fueled by krypton to maneuver into their operational orbit. The guidance computer aboard the Falcon 9 was programmed to release the satellites into an elliptical orbit with an inclination of 53.2 degrees with respect to the equator, to complete the journey into a circular orbit, 335 miles, 540 kilometers above the surface of the Earth. The satellites will make use of the propulsion system housed within them. In order to create SpaceX's global internet network, the Starlink satellites will be placed in one of 5 orbital shells, each of which will have a different inclination. After the satellites have reached their operational orbit, they will enter commercial service and begin beaming broadband signals to consumers. These consumers will be able to purchase Starlink service and connect to the network using a ground terminal that was supplied by SpaceX. Okay, folks, that's it for today's video. If you enjoyed watching this video, give it a thumbs up, click the subscribe button, and ring the bell icon so that you will never miss any videos from us.